This is the Raspberry Pi 4B, and you can see compared to the 3B Plus and the 3B, it's a little bit more complicated. There's a little bit more on the board there, which we're going to go through. Firstly, if we go along this top line here, we can see we have the power in, which is now a USB-C type connector, which is a much better connector for this. We then have HDMI 0 and HDMI 1. Both are HDMI. The 0 is the better quality one. This is your main output, but you can also add a second screen or do all sorts of interesting stuff. They've still kept the composite 4-pole jack 3.5mm composite video audio output. They've still kept that. And there is still the display serial interface and the camera serial interface, the DSI and the CSI. This is the Wi-Fi connector and the Bluetooth. If we look from the side, we can see that the Ethernet, which used to be over here on the 3B and the 3B Plus, has now come over to this side. This is the RJ45 Ethernet connector. Then the two blue USB are in fact USB 3.0. And then here we have two USB 2.0. Here we still have the power over Ethernet pins and still the same 40-pin general purpose input output GPIO to connect external devices to, etc. One big difference, however, is that now there is these two chips. This one is the RJ45 Ethernet. This is the Gigabit Ethernet controller. So we're doing Gigabit Ethernet now. There's a separate chip for this. And here we have the USB 3 and the USB 2 controller chip as well. So they've separated out the USB controller and the Ethernet controller. So as you can, this is how you get Gigabit Ethernet on there. The other big difference, whereas before you had a system on a chip which had everything in it, the CPU and the GPU and the memory, you now have the CPU and GPU on here, on this chip here, and you can see it's got this metal on it as a sort of a help to help it cool. But here also we have separate memory. So they brought in separate memory. So this can either be 1, 2, 4 or 8 gigabytes, depending on which model you bought. So there's your memory chip. So they've separated them out now to get it a bit, to make it perform better. And if we just turn it over again, we can see the same slot there really for the SD cards in the same sort of place. That's where your SD card goes. And, you know, that's for your hard drive really. That's the hard drive on these Raspberry Pi computers. you will also see just here, these two are...
Is there something else?
Oh, you piece of shit. Stop. Just finally, you will see these two little white things here. They're actually LED lights. They're status LEDs. And this one is activity, so that will be flashing. And this one is just power. So that will, when you're plugged in, this one will be on all the time. And then when something's happening, like it's writing to disk or reading to disk or etc., it will be flashing.